to be here, so I hope that he can find adequate Wi-Fi and join the meeting. We are recording this meeting today for the sake of colleagues who are on vacation last week and this week, so we hope that they would not miss the treat we have prepared for you today. My name is Ann Go. I am a Senior International Trade Specialist with the International Trade Administration. I am also the president of the Department of Commerce, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Employee Resource Group. And welcome. To expedite matters, I will ask our facilitator from the Office of Civil Rights, Ms. Felicia Harris. Hi, Felicia. If you would please post in the chat the rules of engagement so our audience would know that, number one, you are welcome to put questions into the chat for the panelists, and if you wish a particular panelist to answer, please indicate their name in a bracket. If not, one of the moderators will read your question and any panelist can choose to answer. I am pausing so our interpreter will have a chance to catch up. This year, the Heritage Month theme is Bridging Histories and Leaving a Lasting Legacies. So we have invited an artist and two authors who have expressed themselves through different media of art and writing. When you're ready, Felicia, please post the bios of the authors in the chat for our audience to read. But I will invite our panelists to introduce themselves very briefly. And before I do that, I want to thank Mr. Francisco Roman, who's the American Sign Language interpreter. Thank you very much for being here and facilitating our conversation. I also will invite, after the panelists introduce themselves, to ask the moderators, Ms. Sharon Williams and Ms. May Cheng, to introduce themselves. So first panelist, Ms. E. Wang, please introduce yourself.
Please introduce yourself. Hello, my name is E. Wang. My last name, Y-A-N-G. And it's pronounced E. E. Wang. Okay, wait a minute. I'm having a problem because she's very pixelated. When you made her larger. Okay, try it again. I'm sorry. Hello, my name is Yiqiao Wang. And I use Yi Wang, Y-I-W-A-N-G. It's pronounced E. Wang. I am an Asian deaf artist. I was born in China, in Beijing. I went to the University of China. Then I came to America and I learned English and ASL at Gallaudet University. I studied media arts and visual arts at Gallaudet University. I have an MFA degree from the University of Sydney. and now I am an industrial artist. I have 5 murals in America. 4 of them are in the DC area. One of them is outside Minnesota, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's all I have for now.
All right, Miss Sarah-SoonLing Blackburn, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. So lovely to be here with all of you. My name is Dr. Sarah-SoonLing Blackburn. I'm an author, an educator, a speaker. I do a lot of work mostly around belonging and inclusion. So I work with companies, organizations, schools on culture and the idea that we all are more successful, happier, do better when we feel like we belong, when we feel like the work we do is relevant to our lives, all of that kind of thing. I started my career as a classroom teacher, and since working with adults, have really found how much we as adults need and crave the same thing that young people do. And as a writer, part of what I try to do is to bring the storytelling component, the history, the knowledge that we don't always have, particularly as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and or Pacific Islander people, you know, because of the invisibility that so often exists, to fill in those pieces to, again, get to that place of belonging. And I'm grateful to be here with all of you today.
Yes, for those of you who may wonder, there is a lag time so that Cisco will have a chance to hear or see what is being said, think about it, then translate it for the other side. And we are learning, because we have among our speakers one who uses sign language, American Sign Language, how the challenges that they face that most of us don't think about. So today is a learning experience for all of us. And at some point in time, we're going to have to let Cisco rest. So that's another reason why there's a lot of pauses and silence in between our speakers. I don't see our third panelist yet, so hopefully he will join us soon. But I would like to introduce our 2 moderators to please introduce themselves, Ms. May Cheng and Ms. Sharon Williams. May, please proceed.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is May Tran, and I will be the moderator to capture your questions in the chat. And my role here is the moderator, and my regular day job position is the Deputy Chief Information Officer for the International Trade Administration. Happy to be here to support. Thank you for having me.
Sharon?
Yes, my name is Sharon Williams. I'm a member of the AAPI ERG, and I'm here to moderate today and to give any support I can to this effort. And my day job is working for FirstNet. That's the First Responder Network Authority, and I'm an administrative assistant.
All right. So Cisco would like to very quickly introduce yourself, and then we will begin.
My name is Cisco Roman. I'm the sign language interpreter in the Department of Commerce. I'm African American person. I have wavy hair, which is, of course, salt and pepper color, and I have a thick mustache, which is also salt and pepper colored, and I have on a blue and white polo shirt.
Thank you, sir. So we will now begin our formal programming. Ms. Williams, please begin.
Yes, thank you. We have some questions for our three panelists, and these questions will apply to all of them. So if one answers the question, the others can be thinking about those questions. So please tell us about expressing yourself and your heritage through your art and writings. Please share with us one or two challenges you've had to overcome and how this experience helped you. What is it you wish for the audience to know about your background and how your expressions have shaped you?
So who's going to answer first?
I think it's Yi.
Okay, fine. All right, I will answer. A challenge for me, there were two challenges for me. Biggest challenge, I would say, considering my lifetime, communication, getting communication across, language. Second challenge for me, the lack of Asian deaf artists. In the art world. The first challenge, because I'm deaf, of course. And in my lifetime, that's been an ongoing challenge. I've tried to overcome that challenge the best way I could in my life. Trying to take care of. Oh, I see. I keep trying to overcome that challenge. And I grab the opportunities whenever I can my skills, the skills that I've acquired, I'd like to share them with people who appreciate art, people who trust me and my artwork. And I will have collaboration opportunities. The biggest challenge has been the communication, of course. And then there's the lack of Asian deaf artists in mainstream art world. In the mainstream art world, you can't find any deaf Asian artists, only one that I know of so far. My art itself allows me to express my opinions, my emotions in different ways. It allows me to get over some of those communication barriers. One of the murals that I've painted is called Deaf AAPI Experience. It's at Union Market in Washington, D.C., in that district area. In May, we celebrate AAPI month. And I've been considering for a long time how to show the Asian American influence, the culture. Sorry, everything is all pixelated. I'm sorry.
It's all pixelated again.
Yeah, it's all pixelated. Perhaps if you come off camera, everybody else off camera for a minute.
Maybe if we all come off camera.
Still. Oh, okay, let's see. No. Close it down, then open up again. No, that's not working. Try. I'm sorry. It's pixelated again. I'm sorry. I can't see you, Yi. I'm sorry. It's very pixelated.
How about so it's her internet. Junior said it's her bandwidth. So now we see, very importantly, for those of you who work for the Commerce Bureau called NTIA, National Telecommunication Information Administration, why the Internet for All and Broadband Access program funded by the U.S. Department of Commerce is so important. You see how deaf Americans would be at a disadvantage when they don't have high-speed internet and joining the rest of us on video calls. I understand that our third panelist, Mr. Len Tran, is in the audience, but he cannot unmute his mic. So Len, would you mind raising your hand, please, so Felicia can rescue you?
Raise your hand so Felicia can rescue you.
In the meantime, I'll ask panelist Sarah-SoonLing Blackburn to please respond to the questions.
Of course. And yes, I think about, I live and work in Mississippi, and a lot of my research background is actually in rural education and rural access. And so thinking about the internet and technology is such an interesting piece that we don't often think about when we're talking about art, connection, inclusion, all of the topics today. So I know that wasn't the point of the panel today, but it's it's an important piece of the puzzle. So the question is about, expressing myself through writing, some of the challenges I had to overcome. I think I always wanted to be a writer. I was one of those kids who would, scribble down stories, and we had an old typewriter, and I just loved to write things on it or write things out by hand. But I never thought that it could be an actual option for me as an adult. And part of that is because the advice that so often you're given as a writer is to write about what you know. And it's good advice. But when I was young, I thought, well, nobody's going to want to read what I know, because I didn't see many stories from people who looked like me, who had my background, not only my Asian American background, but also the fact that I have an international background. My mother's Malaysian Chinese, because my dad was an American diplomat. We moved all the time. So I'm what they call a third culture kid. I grew up in all of these different countries, Tokyo, Beijing. I was born in Bangkok. And, my experience just seemed so different from everything else that the idea of writing about it didn't necessarily make sense. When this book, Exclusion in the Chinese American Story, which I have here, when I was asked to potentially write this book, I had a lot of imposter syndrome. Like most Americans, I didn't learn any of these histories when I was in school myself. So how do you write about something that you didn't necessarily have access to? And then two, I had the question, yes, I am Chinese and American, but am I Chinese American enough? What does that mean? I don't have the direct line to somebody who came and lived in San Francisco and then worked on the railroad, and kind of the traditional, maybe stereotypical story of who a Chinese American person is. But through the course of writing, obviously it became clear that there is no one way to be Chinese American, that you can be biracial, you can be a newer immigrant, you could be adopted. And then by extension, realizing that, you know, just as Chinese American is sort of this richly diverse group, so too is Asian America, or Asian America, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Island America. And realizing that, yes, these categories are very large and very diverse, but they're not meant to erase our individual stories, that both things can coexist at the same time. The idea that, you know, I'm very proud to call myself Malaysian Chinese and have my very specific story, and also can be very proud to call myself NHPI, and through that to feel solidarity, connection, belonging to some people whose backgrounds are actually maybe very different from mine on the surface. And so, you know, in a lot of ways, the process of writing this was healing, and it was this recognition of, yeah, like, you know, my story is valid too. And then hearing from people who've been reading the book since it came out, from adults and young people alike, the way that they're reacting to it, like, wow, I didn't know that our histories go back so far in the United States. Or people who are not Chinese American saying, wow, I didn't realize how my group has connections to your group, or all of these overlaps in history. It's made me feel even more, you know, resolved than ever, that it's so important for us to look for where invisibility in terms of storytelling might exist, and then to try to use art, you know, public art. I love the work that Yi does, but also writing and other forms of art to, you know, make some of us feel a little bit less invisible, and to recognize that America has all of these different components that make us who we are.
Awesome. So I see that we have found our third panelist. He has been stranded somewhere else. And I understand some of our audience also got stranded. So my apologies to all of you who may have missed the first part. This is recorded. So if you wish to go back and catch the slideshow or the first part of the conversation, hopefully you would be able to later. Len, please introduce yourself, sir, and then answer the question if you would. Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much. And talking about stranded, I'm gonna take everyone back in history for a little bit, and how my book came about. Back after the fall of Saigon in 1975, 7 years later in 1982, millions of Vietnamese were leaving the country because you know, we were living under a different government that we feel that we need more than just living there. You know, our lives were taken away. Everything have changed. So in 1982, my dad grabbed me by the arm and he said, "Len, why don't we go to the city and visit your uncle?" And, you know, being just an 8-year-old child, I was like, "Yeah, Dad, you can take me anywhere besides, you know, living in the countryside and taking care of the pigs and the chickens." And so when I look at my dad and I said, "Dad, are we gonna go with Mom and, you know, my siblings?" And Dad said, "No, it just only be both of us." And, you know, I didn't think of anything much of it. And so I went with Dad, walked along the beach. And when we got to this strange house, and I asked Dad, I said, "Dad, this is not the direction to go see Uncle in the city. This is kind of different." And Dad's like, "Yo, don't worry about it. We're gonna have dinner and we're gonna sleep here for the night." So once again, I didn't think anything of it. I was just so excited to go see my uncle in the city. And that night we had dinner along with, you know, people who I don't even know. And so when we finished, he said, "Why don't you just go to the corner and sleep over there?" At dawn, a strange man picked me up, put me on his shoulder, and just ran across the beach, and then they just threw me into the boat. And I screamed, and so he covered my mouth and he said, "Shut up, you're gonna get us killed." And when he turned around, I grabbed onto the side of the boat and about to jump out. And then I heard a voice said, "Len, just sit still." And when I looked up, it was my dad. And so he was with a bunch of other men pushing the boat out to the sea. And sitting in front of me were women and children. And then when the boat gained buoyancy, he jumped in along with other men. And when the captain revved the engine, and when we went out to sea, and when the land was vanished from our sight, the captain turned off the engine and said, "It's time to find freedom." And so I looked at Dad. I was like, "Freedom? What are you talking about? How about mom and my siblings?" And Dad didn't even say a word. And I could see the tears brimming down the corner of his eyes. And at that time, I just wanted to hold his hand and put my face onto his chest and just be with the person who I trusted and loved most. And that became my journey to come to America. We got stranded for 21 days at sea before we got rescued. And after living in Hong Kong refugee camp for 3 months, and then later on in the Philippines for another 6 months, where we had to learn English before we were able to sponsor to America. So in 1982, Dad and I were brought to the South Bronx of New York City, where I had to adapt to this new culture. I didn't know any English at all, very, very little that I've learned from the Philippines refugee camp. And it was very difficult to assimilate into this new culture. And there were days that we had to roam the streets of New York City just to find whatever that we can salvage. And the first piece of furniture that we salvaged was actually a mattress, what we found in the dumpster, and it became my mattress for a very long time. So growing up, I've always had this thought that, you know, I will never be able to fit in America, that my English was not good enough. And so, you know, imposter syndrome is like constantly, you know, kicking in until 3 years ago. Suddenly out of nowhere, my daughter knocked on my door and she said, "Dad, can you tell me how you and Grandpa were able to survive in that boat journey as a Vietnamese boat people?" And so that's when something just ignited in me and fueled me to write my book, which is that memoir titled "Split Up by the Sea." And similar to what Sarah had mentioned earlier, you know, I went to school, I studied engineering, and you figured, you know, an engineer doesn't want to write. All we want to do is just sit in the corner and just, you know, solve our formulas. But I felt that, you know, it is time for me to embrace my story so that other people can understand, you know, what we went through as Vietnamese immigrants. And the reason why we study so hard is not like, you know, we become so good in math or whatever subject that we want to study. It's because that we went through so much in our lives that we just learned to persevere. And through, you know, those 21 days in the middle of the ocean, and, you know, 8 months as living as refugees, and then, you know, 20 plus years surviving in New York City, it just gives me that discipline, that drive to become a better person. And I'm proud that, you know, I can speak for other Vietnamese boat people by writing this book.
So I'm going to, I know one of our panelists has to leave at 1, but I want her to hear the answer to this question. So my apologies to the moderator for jumping in. But Len, you have 2 books. So the first part is what you explained. And then obviously we now know from your bio that you are a supervisor in the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. That means you have moved up in the ranks. And number 2, you wrote a book called Breaking Bricks, or Break the Bricks. Would you mind telling us the second part of that story, please?
Yes. So again, let's go back to the imposter syndrome, right? You know, we always have this thought of, you know, fear, self-doubt, not believing in ourselves. So I figure, you know, now that I finished writing my memoir, I want to write another book, a book that I can inspire people. So as a GS-15 in the USPTO, the patent office, for the last 17 years, I actually wanted to write this book for my employees because I want to empower them. I want them to show them the way that, you know, we can believe in ourselves. We have this system, this beliefs. And right halfway through writing Break the Bricks, I was like, you know what, I can make this for everybody. It doesn't have to be just only for my employees. And I was so proud that I was able to place a lot of what I have learned during my 21 days stranded in the sea, and also, you know, how I came about and how I struggled throughout my entire life. And so, yes, Break the Bricks, you know, came about and was published back in October 2023.
All right, we have questions from the audience in the chat. So moderators, please.
Hey everyone, we have the first question for Yiqiao. Who are your role models? Who inspired you despite not having other Asian American artists who are deaf? Cisco, you're on mute.
Okay. The inspiration comes from Peking Opera, the Peking Opera, because their art is very special. It's very, very special, and it's very active. Betty Beauty was a designer who also inspired me.
Thank you. Thank you, Yiqiao. The next question we have is for Len Tran. Were you ever able to reunite with the rest of your family?
Yes.
Were you-
So after almost 10 years of living in America, until my father was almost done with his education, getting his bachelor degree, and this is at the age of almost 40, that, you know, he was able to go back to school, get his GED, sitting with 19, 20-year-old kids, got his bachelor degree, and then suddenly out of nowhere, we got this phone call from Hong Kong, and it was my mom. She made a collect call, and she said, you know, I am in Hong Kong right now. With your siblings, and, you know, we were just so surprised, and we're like, how did you get there? And so she also became a boat person herself. So then after 3 months of her living in Hong Kong, we sponsored here to America.
Thank you, Len Tran. And I think we have another question. I think for both Yiqiao and our author Sarah-SoonLing, maybe. It's about most Asian parents do not encourage a career in arts for the children. How do your parents feel about your career? Any panelists or all panelists? Feel free.
Yes. I'm answering. My mother and father now live in Beijing, and they still support my art as I was growing up. They loved, you know, my passion for art, and so they supported me. My mom is an art lover, and she could draw also. She was a very good artist herself. And of course, my mom and we went to our first Starbucks together. And so from that, I did get the Starbucks mural that I painted, and I got that opportunity. There was no competition for it or any kind of a selection panel or anything like that. There was nothing of that sort. I just talked with my father and he said, hey, Starbucks, why not see, they're very supportive. Why not see if maybe they will let you put a mural there? So there are 25 people at the Starbucks in Washington, D.C. And then, I'm sorry, I'm having a problem. Say it again. Say it again. The Starbucks had a large heart, a large hearing heart. And so my father said, why don't you go to Starbucks and see if they will allow you to put up a mural there in the deaf Starbucks in Northeast Washington? And I said, oh, no, no, no. I didn't think so. I really don't think so. Why would I sell my art to Starbucks? And my father said, you can try, at least try. Keep trying, keep trying. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks. My father kept encouraging me again and again and again. For 2 weeks, he just kept encouraging me. And luck would have it that there was an Asian American person there who happened to like my art, cherish it. There was some people who had very rich experiences. And so I did listen to my father. And I sent him an email with a PDF attached to it, with a picture of my art. And I sent that to Starbucks also, to their art program. After about 20 minutes, they said they were interested. So the opportunity was there. And it's been onward and upward ever since. I had to be alert to the opportunities that were presented.
Very inspirational. That's very inspirational story. Thank you, Ewan. Sarah-SoonLing,
Yes,
would you like to share?
I would. This is a great question because when I was growing up, I heard the stereotype, right? Asian parents don't want you to go into the arts. You need to be a doctor. You need to be an engineer, STEM, just go into STEM. And I didn't really understand where it came from because I had grown up so much in Asia. I was really surrounded by Asian art. Yi mentioned Peking opera, which is what I often heard in my grandparents' home or just out on the streets in Beijing. You'd hear, traditional music. There's such a rich tradition of visual arts, musical arts, all kinds of arts, storytelling across Asia. And yet we have this idea that our Asian parents, or at least Asian American parents, don't want us to go into the arts. And it always kind of baffled me, right? Why is that the case? And it goes back to that thing I was saying about why it's so important to understand our history. So most Asian immigrants, most Asian people in the United States today came after 1965, the passage of the Immigration and Naturalization Act, Immigration and Nationality Act. And that law really framed the immigration system we have today. And it put, it both opened up immigration to far more groups, so refugee groups like Len's family, but also put a strong preference on people with skills in backgrounds like science, medicine, engineering, technology, these fields that are traditionally associated with Asian Americans today. So naturally, if you're recruiting for mathy people, then you're going to have more mathy people, right? And so my mother, when I wanted to be a writer, when I wanted to be a teacher, she was like, no, 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 no. You won't be successful. That's not the path, because the story she had been told is the path to success in the United States is to be one of these very specific careers, which was funny to me because she was a teacher. She was a teacher herself. She loves the arts. And I think that comes from fear a lot of times, right? Because we don't travel across an ocean. We don't risk so much for our children to struggle. And so the fear was she didn't want me to struggle. And once she saw, oh, you can be happy, successful, fulfilled, and not just like monetarily, but also in a much more holistic human way, by being a teacher, by being an artist, then now she couldn't be prouder. And so that's the story I often try to tell. I work with some AAPI parent groups and try to tell them the same thing. Look, like our young people, Asian American, Pacific Islander young people, have pretty high rates of mental health struggle because they feel like if they don't fit into that box, then they don't know what their other options are. And we have to help expand the idea. We need to share the stories of artists like you. We need to tell the stories of families like Len's, because through those examples, one of my favorites is the story of a man named Tyrus Wang. I'm sure everyone here can visualize Bambi. And this is the artist who painted the background art, that moody forest that is so part of the American imagination, is a Chinese American artist who combined Chinese and Western watercolor techniques. And it's sort of infused into American culture, but most of us don't know those stories. But if we do know them, maybe we can have, more experiences and more people who are out there showing up as, in all of the ways that we can be successful.
Thank you so much, Sarah-SoonLing. Thank you for that story. Very, very encouraging for other stereotype family parents who want their children to be in the STEM field. How about Len Tran?
Yes, certainly. I would love to chime in with that discussion as well. I believe that everything depends on the circumstances and also the environment. So for my situation was because when we came here in 1982, Dad just wanted, to find a job, right? And he was working at a pizzeria, washing pots and pans, dishes, making $2.25 an hour, right? So then back in Vietnam, as Vietnamese, you think about doctors or engineers and something within the STEM major. So the very first thing he placed in his mind was, okay, I'm gonna get either a technical degree or at least a bachelor in engineering. So while he was going to school, he was also putting that in my head as well. He's like, look, Len, dad is struggling, and I don't want to see you struggle as well. So while I'm doing my homework and doing my math, why don't you sit there and do your math on the side? And I remember that day when I was about to enter college, right? I said, Dad, I think I want to, study something in liberal arts. I want to do, psychology. And it's like, then, he brought me back to, that scene in 1982 again, when we were in the boat and how we struggle. And again, Sarah talked about fear. And again, his fear is he wants me to also, have a stable career, and that STEM would probably give me that kind of opportunity. So that's what I did. I was like, okay, you know what? Let me put psychology on the side a little bit, and I'm gonna be an engineer. So I studied to be a chemical engineer. But right after when I finished my chemical engineering, Dad was proud of me, and he said, okay, now it's time for you to go back and study what you love. And that is exactly what I'm doing with my daughter right now. And she She has this ability where she picks up, music and arts, just like that. And I said, you know what, just do what you are happy. It's because, right now her environment and her circumstances are different compared to mine.
Thank you, Len Tran. And that also, if I summarize all from the three panelists, opportunities are everywhere, and we all have different potentials, even if we study in mechanical engineering, and if we have passion in arts, we can also pursue artistic work. So thank you very much for sharing your stories. I do have more questions in the chat. This one is Sarah. How did you find the South when you first got there after an international background? Please tell us why Mississippi feels like home for you.
Oh, this is a good question. I think if you had asked me when I was a teenager, where are you going to live? And then you had told me it would be Mississippi or the Deep South, I would have been so surprised. In fact, I might have been surprised to learn that I would end up staying in the United States permanently, because I grew up moving back and forth, and so much of my family is in Malaysia, but also in other places because, Malaysia was a British colony. So many of my relatives have gone to other former colonies as well, to New Zealand, to Australia, people to the UK, various parts of the world. So we're really spread out. And I just figured I grew up moving, I'll always keep moving. And yet I've lived here. I moved to Mississippi, actually, I think almost exactly 15 years ago, moved to the Deep South 15 years ago. And so this very much feels like home now. There are a few things. One, I had this again goes to my point about invisibility and lack of history, that the stories I had heard about the Deep South were very negative, mostly. And when I moved here, I found that, a lot of those things are based in truth. They are based in true, difficult histories. And anytime you see stories of oppression, of prejudice, you will always find stories of people who resisted. It's no coincidence that the South is also the heart of the American Civil Rights Movement, the source of resistance, solidarity, organizing, and all of these things. And yet that part of the story wasn't highlighted for me when I was growing up. So that was one piece of the puzzle that made me realize there's so much here that's so beautiful and rich and wonderful and communal that I wasn't aware of. On another part of it is I didn't know that there were Asian people here. So when I first moved to the South, I was actually living in a very, very small town in Arkansas. And I was driving through, and this town is on a lake, and there was a dock on the lake, and it had like a pagoda at the end of the dock. And I was like, what's happening here? So I pulled over and I got out, and I'm just kind of looking at it. And this man comes out of his house, this Chinese man comes out of his house, and he starts talking to me in the thickest Southern accent I had ever heard in my life up until that point. And, he's like, hey, who are you? Welcome. Like, I've never seen you before. He had a case of Bud Light he's bringing out, like, he's like so excited. And this man, his family had been there for generations. They owned the grocery store in the town. They were part of this long history of Mississippi Delta Chinese that some of you might have heard about because there have been some articles in the last few years. But I had no idea. And so realizing that, it's not just California and the railroads and all of this, that actually there were Asian people who were brought first to the South to work on as sharecroppers. Because, again, all of our histories are kind of intermingled, that after the end of the American Civil War, when so many formerly enslaved people left or had self-emancipated or, no longer wanted to work on the cotton plantations, and they were looking for cheap sources of labor that Asian people were for a time thought to like fill in that gap. I didn't know about those connected histories. And so learning that, has made me realize like all of our stories, our whole country is full of these rich, complicated, intermingled stories. If you can be happy in a place, it doesn't matter where that place is, right? It matters that it makes sense for you, for your family, and all of those kinds of things.
Thank you, Sarah. And that sounds just like your book. You can be any Asian American or American Asian or Asian American because there's so many stories about each of us. So that's wonderful. I think I have a follow-up question in the chat. What contribution did Asian Americans in the Deep South you think the audience should know?
Well, thank you for mentioning the book, May. So I will say that a lot of the stories I've mentioned already are ones that you can read about in the book, and it's very accessible. It's also very affordable. So it's not like a a dense textbook. So I recommend that. But I think that, there are a lot of stories of resistance in the South. I think about the fishing communities on the Gulf Coast who really organized for better labor practices, for stronger working conditions. And these are stories that we don't often hear about, right? And I actually think about not just in the South, but across the United States, there's this idea that Asian people are, we're just passive. When actually there's so many stories of young Asian Americans like Mabel Ping-Hua Lee who advocated for women's rights to vote. That's the story we don't often hear about. Or the story of Larry Itliong, who's a Filipino farm worker who worked alongside Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, advocating again for labor rights. And I think that we as a country need to learn these stories as well.
Thank you. I don't think we have any more questions from the audience.
Well, May, since may I interrupt real quickly? We have our Chief Diversity Officer who is on the call, as well as the Office Director of the Office of Civil Rights. And this event it benefits greatly from the support of the Commerce Department Office of Civil Rights. And so I want to take a moment to ask our Chief Diversity Officer to say a few words. Junish, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Anne. And first of all, I really want to thank our three amazing panelists, Wang, Dr. Sarah-SoonLing Blackburn, and Len Tran, our very own USPTO's Len Tran, for really sharing their experiences as artists, as Asians, as historians, as visual artists, as chroniclers. I think they really captured the theme of expressing yourself so well. And I think for Asian American communities, we need to express ourselves more. We need to share our talents, our experiences, our challenges, our triumphs. Of course, I also want to thank Ann Go, the president of the AAPI ERG, and Sharon Williams, the president of the Differing Abilities ERG, for putting on this great program, in addition to Felicia Harris from the Office of Civil Rights, and Cisco Roman for his stellar sign language translation, as always. This month is a great opportunity to celebrate Asian Americans and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders, the community's diversity of cultures and breadth of achievements, and the leaders and the artists and the authors who continue to shape a brighter future for all of us. You might be surprised to know that we currently within the United States have a really robust population of 22.4 million Asians and 1.8 million Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islanders. Here at the Department of Commerce, we believe that representation matters and all communities deserve opportunity for economic growth and opportunity. DOC is committed to equity and inclusion, and we've initiated many steps to advance equity, justice, and opportunity for Asian Americans and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander communities. Through the Office of Civil Rights, we support the White House Initiative on advancing equity, justice, and opportunity for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. This order mandates federal agencies to address systemic barriers and opportunities and benefits to advance equity, justice, and opportunity for the AI and NHPI communities. To demonstrate its commitment for the next 2 years, the department has identified 4 concrete actions that it will take to benefit the AI and NHPI communities, as well as the overall DOC workforce. Those goals are disaggregating our data products to ensure greater detailed reporting and accuracy, working with AA and NHPI community-based organizations, chambers of commerce, minority serving institutions, or NAPC organizations, to become grantees, MOUs, and strategic partners and clients of the bureaus under the department. Conducting listening sessions with our employees to ensure equitable promotions, promoting career resources and career development programs and opportunities, including building a cross-bureau working group, staffing a cross-bureau working group to identify specific steps and barriers to career advancement. These goals were developed through the department's White House Initiatives ANHPI Working Group. These efforts also align to the department's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategic Plan 22 and 20 to 26, and will be monitored by the department's Equity Council. So I want to thank all of us for participating. I think we had about 125 participants at one time. So thank you for your time. We know it's valuable. Really appreciate you learning about these amazing NHPI artists and authors. And with that, I'll turn it back to Anne. Thank you, Anne.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. And before we lose most of you, on May 30th, please join us for a presentation. It's an interagency presentation about indigenous technology, Native Hawaiian fish ponds. And so I will share information about that for anyone who may have missed it the first time around. But our very own board member, Francis Sakaguchi, is with the Economic Development Administration, part of Commerce Department. She will be a part of that effort, and I look forward to seeing as many of you there as possible. Please join us and to learn about how indigenous, how Native Hawaiian culture and wisdom and knowledge can help us navigate these climate change times. Thank you very much, everyone. And if there are any last minute comments or questions, please take it away. And anyone who needs to drop off, please feel free to do so.
The last question was someone asking about Len Tran's book on Amazon. We already answered that, so thanks, Len Tran. And of course, if other people are interested in Dr. Sarah's books, I think it's also on Dr. Sarah's website directly. I didn't find it. Is it available on Amazon as well? Oh, I searched on Amazon.
It's anywhere books are sold, you can find it. Amazon,
okay, great.
Audible.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. And thank you to our amazing moderators, Sharon Williams and Ms. Cheng, who are also, by the way, for those of you who are not aware, they're also champions of the differing abilities, employees and folks among us who do not communicate the same way as the rest of us. And now I think today you've seen an example of the challenges faced by those who have different abilities. So I hope this will encourage you to learn more and to be more patient with others who may need a little extra time to express themselves. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great, fantastic day.